What's up, you guys? Your boy Bill Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. You know, much love to all my subscribers out there and all my LDBC brothers out there doing their thing out there. You know what I mean? Um, I just wanted to talk about this whole thing between Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson, and it's regarding to the whole triple double record. And Oscar Robertson has been pretty much on the record saying that he wants Westbrook to break his record of career triple doubles. Um, Oscar Robertson currently, right now, is the all-time leader in triple doubles. He's got over 181 career triple doubles during his 14 seasons in the NBA with Cincinnati and with Milwaukee. Um, as for Russell Westbrook, he posted a triple double despite losing to the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday night, basically totaling his record to 179 career triple doubles. 19 of those triple doubles came in the last 23 games, and as of now, he only needs three more to become the NBA's all-time leader in career double doubles, and only has 6 games left in the regular season to pull off this kind of career feat. And if he doesn't do it, he probably will do it next season. As of right now, in terms of the overall list, Magic Johnson is third all time with 138, followed by Jason Kidd with 107. And the closest active player to Westbrook's record is actually LeBron James, but he only has 99. Um, James Harden and Nikola Jokic are the only active players included in the top 10 list. As of this year, Russell Westbrook is averaging 21.8 points per game, 11.3 rebounds per game, and 11.2 assists per game, heading into the game against the Milwaukee on Wednesday night. This is the fourth time in his career that he's averaged a triple double for an entire season, and he was also the first player to pull off this kind of feat since Oscar Robertson back to the 2016-2017 season, which basically prompted the great Hall of Famer in congratulating him. You know what I mean? Um, this is what he pretty much had to say to the New York Times. This is what Oscar Robertson said, end quote. I totally enjoyed the way Westbrook plays. He's a dynamic individual. They moved him around to different teams, and I don't know why. Because I think he's one of the star point guards in basketball. I guess they thought that when he went to Washington that he would not be that effective. But man, he's done a tremendous job. Now, I've seen a lot of people, you know, going up in arms, you know, talking about the criticism of Russell Westbrook. Some of it's valid, some of it's invalid. Now, this is what Oscar Robertson had to say, and this is the same, and this is what he pretty much said to the New York Times in the same article. This is what he pretty much had to say. Quote: I think it's ridiculous that some sports writers criticize him because he's not won a championship. Players don't win championships by themselves. You got to have good management. You need to get the right group of players. Look at Brooklyn. Who could have done this years ago? How things have changed. It seems now what's happened in basketball, and I haven't seen this in football yet, is players will get together and say, let's go and play for this team so we can win. Years ago, you wouldn't even thought of doing that. End quote. Now, I'm going to break this down into two separate parts. I'm going to separate, you know, that quote that I just read and then talk about, you know, what my personal thing about the whole triple double thing. Now, as far as me is concerned, I'm not including any of my, brothers like Ticket, Two Raw, Lamont, LVZ, all that. They have their different perspectives, and some of them I agree, some of them I don't. But I don't have an issue with Oscar Robertson wanting for him to break his record. And here's the reason why I'm saying that. Because from my perspective, Russell Westbrook is pretty much playing as our generation's version of Oscar Robertson. All right, he's basically the pretty much the last breed of guards that doesn't emphasize the 3-point shot a lot. You know what I'm saying? He's the kind of guy that plays with a high motor. You know what I mean? And always tries to go out there and give 110% effort every single night. Now, there's been a perception of him that has been accusing him of stat padding. You know what I mean? But the problem is those same critics out there don't give that same kind of energy when it comes to James Harden, who is the all-time king leader of stat padding. And people will say about Russell Westbrook that he turns the ball over a lot, which he does. But the last time I checked, and I checked this out by the stats before I did the video, Russell Westbrook throughout his career has only led the NBA in turnovers only 4 times in his career. While James Harden, the guy that doesn't get much criticism at all, led the NBA in turnovers 6 different times in his career. Okay. And I just find it funny how they have tried to nitpick Russell Westbrook's game, but at the same time, they don't do the same when it comes to James Harden. You know what I mean? And I just find that to be ridiculous. Now, as far as talent is concerned, now yes, he played with Kevin Durant, and he did play with James Harden when he was originally a sixth man, and he did play with Serge Ibaka. All right, but sometimes you got to have things right for them to win a championship. And remember, Russell Westbrook had that infamous knee injury when he basically got ran by a Patrick Beverly that pretty much derailed him for about a couple of years. All right, it didn't derail his career entirely. I'm just saying for a couple of years because it took him a long time to pretty much recover from that injury. All right, and the thing about that OKC team was is that despite how talented they were, I've always believed that coaching has a lot to do with how to get the guys to pretty much formulate and play together as a crew. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that Scott Brooks is entirely a bad coach. He was just not the right coach for that particular team with that kind of star level of talent to get the guys to play at the right direction to get them to win a championship. You picked 3 of the 4 players that won MVP and you don't get them to win a championship. I mean, that's just a huge failure on not just the coaching, but just at the organization as a total. All right. But I will say that James Harden, you could make a great case that James Harden played with much better talent around with the Houston Rockets during the times when he won MVP and when he led the Rockets to 65 regular season victories in 2018. But at the same time, what did happen during the playoffs? You know what I mean? I know a lot of James Harden fans don't like to hear that, but that's just the truth. You know what I mean? He had his opportunities and he had excellent talent around him, but just couldn't get it done in the postseason. You know what I mean? I just find that to be very, very hypocritical. But my point is simply is this. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem with Russell Westbrook's game. I do will say that Scott Brooks made the claim that he's probably the second greatest point guard in NBA history. Um, I kind of disagree with that. You know what I mean? Because still, to me, the greatest point guard in the history of the game is Magic Johnson. I mean, for a 6'9" point guard to do the things that he used to do back then in his career is phenomenal. But to me, my top 5 greatest point guards is obviously Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, um, Oscar Robertson. You know what I mean? John Stockton led the NBA in assists for at least for a record 6 or 7 years. I mean, there's no other point guard that has ever done that. And then Jason Kidd. You know what I mean? Um, is he a top 50 player? That's up for debate. He's if you want to put him as a top 75 player of all time, Russell Westbrook, absolutely. You know what I mean? But that's up to you to decide. But I tend to think that what Russell Westbrook has been able to do throughout his entire career has been nothing short of phenomenal. You know what I mean? Despite losing all of those great players that he had with OKC, for him to average a triple double, not just for one particular season. You know what I mean? When you look at his stats per se, okay? When you look at his totality of his stats, let me pull this up real quick. When you look at his totality of his stats, okay, he basically averaged a triple double for about a good for about 3 straight seasons in his last 3 years with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, that's just phenomenal. And yes, he deserved to win the MVP award basically back in 2017. I mean, he's pretty much earned his stripes into the Hall of Fame. Now, sure, some people don't like his attitude. Some people don't like his on the court antics. But you know what? You could pretty much dismiss all that when he basically gives you the same amount of effort every night. Now, I do agree that his decision making in the fourth quarter is very questionable. But last time I checked, um, James Harden has not had his great moments in the fourth quarter either. You know what I mean? So let's just be careful when we try to nitpick on that. Now, as far as the Oscar Robertson angle is concerned, the reason why I believe that Oscar Robertson is pretty much saying those kind of praises to him is because he sees a lot of his game in Russell Westbrook because he's a kind of player, and I'll tell you a little story. I met with Oscar Robertson back in 2015 in New York City at the what was it? The Rasmussen Hotel. I forgot which name it was. That's the hotel in Times Square. But I had a chance to talk with Oscar Robertson with me and another friend of mine, and we talked about how what his favorite type of player that he prefers. He told me that he prefers the all around player, the guy that not just can just score, but set teammates up, grab rebounds, and pretty much control the entire pace of the game. Because throughout his career, Oscar Robertson predicated his game by being an all around player. All right. He didn't like guys like Michael. He didn't like, just, you know, scores like Michael Jordan, which I don't know why, but I mean, that's just his preference. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he didn't like Michael Jordan. He liked LeBron James. All right. He had mixed reviews about Kobe Bryant. So I mean that's just his preference. I mean, you look back at his time in the NBA. Think about this for a moment. During the 60s and 70s, and the other quarter to the thing I said was that when he talked about how, players, can now team up with each other in this version of basketball, it wasn't the case back then. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing from the quote. But the thing about that was is that during the 60s and early 70s, when you were playing for your Pacific team during that time, the ownership dictated your basically your fate. All right, they pretty much own your contract, and they have basically the power and the right to pretty much you know decide if they want to resign you or just let you walk or just even trade you. This was one of the reasons why Oscar Robertson, led the lawsuit against the NBA to pretty much force the NBA to allow players to decide where they wanted to go, which implemented free agency in the early 70s. All right. And without Oscar Robertson's contributions to that, free agency wouldn't be as prevalent to what it is today. You know what I mean? And he deserves a lot of credit for that because without the whole lawsuit of Robertson versus the National Basketball Association in 1970, which is basically an antitrust lawsuit, which was filed by himself as a president of the Players Association. You know what I mean? It changed the extensive reform of the league's strict free agency and policy and draft rules and allowed players to achieve higher salaries. That was very much important. And a lot of those things that Oscar Robertson fought for is now being shown to what you see today. You know what I mean? Because now players can pretty much talk to each other, even if they're opposite teams, about pretty much playing with each other. They could talk about, oh, it's basically tampering. But what's the league supposed? What is the league going to do? Are you going to pretty much put the clamp down on that? Because then it's going to get down to a freedom of speech type of issue, and I don't think the NBA wants to deal with that. You know what I mean? So I do tend to think that Oscar Robertson deserves major credit for that. But let's continue on with basketball. Okay, he pretty much played 10 seasons through the Cincinnati Royals. You know what I mean? It was a blessing in disguise that he got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. All right, and the big reason was that is that when Bob Cousy was the head coach of the Cincinnati Royals, they did not like each other. They didn't see eye to eye with one another. You know what I mean? And prior to that, he had some talent with those teams in Cincinnati, but they weren't the quality talent that was necessary to get them over the hump. And let's just be real with ourselves here. The talent that he had was nothing in comparison to what the Celtics had during the 60s. All right. You could pretty much say the same for the Los Angeles Lakers. Despite having Jerry West and Elgin Baylor on the team, I mean, those two players weren't enough to defeat those immortal teams of the Celtics during the 60s. I mean, no other team could have done what the Celtics did during that time. Even Wilt Chamberlain himself, physically dominating and as imposing as ever, still couldn't figure out a way to beat the Boston Celtics. All right, but it wasn't until him being traded to the Bucks prior to the 70-71 season that pretty much changed the course of his career. And when he teamed up with a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, come fresh out of the draft, they pretty much ran through the entire season in '71 en route to the championship. And just pretty much in 12 in his was it 11 to 12 season in the NBA, he achieved winning a championship, which was the biggest highlight of his career. and pretty much put the final signature of a great career that he had. And so, in a way, it was a blessing in disguise for Oscar Robertson because he was able to win a championship. If he had to play his entire career with the Cincinnati Royals, he would have been one of the greatest players in NBA history without winning an NBA championship. Okay. So I do see why Oscar Robertson favors Russell Westbrook and somewhat of LeBron James because of the fact that he was able to, play this all around game that he does. So, but it is what it is on that. Now, I don't personally have a problem with him, wanting for him to break his record. You know what I mean? Like that. You know what I'm saying? For the reasons that I gave. Now, to be honest with you, you know what I mean? I don't have an issue with that at all. You know, a lot of these legends, do give their respect to great players. You know what I'm saying? And I tend to think right now, Oscar Robertson is pretty much reflective of how, great of a player Russell Westbrook is. Now, he doesn't have an NBA championship, which is true. You know what I mean? And could he win an NBA championship? We don't know. Right now, Russell Westbrook is 32 years old. You know what I mean? And even though he still had another quality year, the issue is how long can he continue to play at this level? And is he willing to change and adapt this game as he gets older? Those are the questions that we're gonna have to figure out in the next few years. But you know what I'm saying? But I do give Russell Westbrook his praise. I do give Russell Westbrook his respect of what he's been able to do for basketball. You know what I mean? Now, where you want to put him in the conversation of great guards in NBA history, that's up for debate. But at the end of the day, we're witnessing history as we're watching, Russell Westbrook, achieve one of the biggest, records in NBA history. And I think he deserves a lot of respect for that. But that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. And with that, I'm out. Peace.